New Mexico's liquor laws, and maybe more specifically its liquor licenses, have long been a maze of rules and regulations that apply to one business but not the next, depending on what license they hold. Now, one rule holds firm, though: no alcohol delivery. During the pandemic, many restaurants say that will let the air out of an already deflated profits. A new law could change that, but is it the right move? Our Line Opinion panel this week: attorney and regular panelist Laura Sanchez is back with us. Good to see you here. And two returning guests join us as well. Editorial page editor for the Santa Fe New Mexican, that would be Inez Russell Gomez. And owner and founder of Vox Optima Public Relations, that would be Merritt Allen. She returns as well. Merritt, staying with you. Based on what you've seen of this legislation, is New Mexico playing with fire here?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, this has been the messiness of our liquor license regulations has, resulted in one great thing, and that's the rise of the micro distillery.
Right.
Because if you make it on premises, you can sell it on premises. Little Toad Creek in Silver City, probably my favorite example of this, but it's a trend that has really expanded throughout the state. And, it's time to even the playing field. I think the concerns of the existing old school 6 or 7 figure dollar liquor licenses, I understand their concern, but this, as many people give the example, this is like letting Uber into a market with taxi drivers in the large metro areas. So much for their medallions. My thought is, if you have an existing old school liquor license, you get excused from GRT for a year.
Well, I want to come back to that, because the whole thing about the value of somebody holding a $500,000 or more liquor license and what that means now. Laura Sanchez, I want to get to something that I hear on the street a lot, and that is this idea that a delivery person is going to be standing at the front door of someone's home trying to determine if they are drunk or not, to be able to hand them that alcohol. Is this actually a doable scheme in your mind when you picture this scenario?
Certainly that's one of the concerns that I have about it. There is a lot of discretion that's required. Delivery drivers often use this. I know a lot of teenagers, young adults that do this kind of work. So I think we would need to adjust the age of folks who are driving to deliver alcohol, probably, and not just over 21 necessarily, but maybe 25. There needs to be a level of maturity where you sort of have a lot more to lose if something should go wrong. So discretion, I think, will be very important. You certainly don't want to get into a situation where somebody's making an order and then their buddies are the ones delivering it for later or something like that. I mean, it's just fraught with potential misuse and problems. So, but I think that all of those concerns should be addressed, and there should be a process of empowering the regulation and licensing department to determine, rules and regulations that could deal with that sort of a scenario, and not necessarily legislate it so specifically. I don't think those concerns are a reason not to explore this option, because I think it would be a huge revenue producer for local businesses that have been hit hard. And many of the upscale places, do in many cases their own craft distillery liquor or other wines or beers, and it would be a huge boon for them financially.
Inez, interesting when you think about it. It's hard to think this would be anything but a boon, as Laura's describing it, for restaurants. Is this the clear ticket we think it is? Are we seeing this clearly? I mean, we have vaccinations going. We have a lot of things happening that may not necessarily make for home delivery, that impactful. How are you seeing this as it plays along over the next couple of months?
I think once people can go out again, they're going to want to be sitting on patios in the summer having drinks and snacks with their friends. They're not going to want to get liquor deliveries at the house. So the impact may not be what it would have been had they been able to do it, let's say 6 months ago.
Right.
And I believe the governor was hoping it would be considered during the special session in June. On the other hand, if you're home late at night and you want a nice meal and some wine, being able to get it delivered is better than going out
Mhm.
for some people. So it just seems like it expands your choices without necessarily turning it into something where people just drink all the time at home, or are greeting you at the door drunk. I'm really more interested in expanding liquor licensing, because we created a system that protected people who already had,
Right.
while limiting the market to people who wanted to open up, let's say, a nice corner restaurant, that kind of thing. And if you want, let's say, an Albuquerque downtown where people from Netflix are going out after work to have drinks and dinner and walk around, it seems like more is going to expand the pie for everybody. So I think the legacy liquor holders might want to think about what it's going to be like when dinner guests it's expanding. I think this is an opportunity to grow our economy so that everyone benefits. And yes, you might have to do something to help the people who invested more in their liquor license, but you're also going to make it more available to young entrepreneurs, so that the only people in New Mexico who are buying liquor licenses aren't big chains or people who've had them for 50 years.
Which is the case as we have now. I mean, it would shock most people, the companies out of state that own New Mexico liquor licenses here would just, big conglomerates. It's just not workable. Laura, the idea of someone being able to lay down $3,000 and, get a liquor license as opposed to the folks that paid $500,000, there's ideas out there to lessen the blow, but can this really be done without a full, and I mean a full accounting financially for people that hold licenses currently? Is a tax abatement going to work for them? I mean, there's all kinds of ideas out there. But we're talking about something they paid a lot of money for suddenly going to almost zero, or 3,000 in value, if you think about it.
Well, so I think that it's important to think about people who hold that liquor license as, a piece of property that has value, but they've also had a lot of use out of that piece of property.
Hadn't thought about that.
So, there are also those that have multiple, that own or hold multiple licenses, and then, may have a restaurant or something, and then they actually lease or license the other liquor license to another new establishment. That happens a lot. So we have this secondary market that's been functioning for a long time. There's value in the use of it, and so somehow there will need to be some consideration for that. What's been the use of it? How do those people still retain it? But it isn't just a static thing. Like, we're not talking about something that, increases in value necessarily, like the stock market. I mean, the value is in, yes, the market, but also the use of it. If you have a liquor license and you're not actually using it, the fact that you hold on to it doesn't mean a whole lot. It's your ability to license it out to somebody else, or to actually use it to open something that has its value. So somehow there needs to be a consideration of all of those factors in determining that process. Again, legislating something that's that specific, it's tricky, because then you're bound by whatever's in the law. I favor, the broad strokes of a system, and then empowering a state agency to deal with the rulemaking, where you have a lot more time than 60 days to have input from the community, from businesses, from others that would be impacted.
Yes, thank you for getting that in there. Guys, we can't get out of this if we don't talk about treatment. Merritt, the idea of holding harmless, or, keeping people from harming themselves, that kind of thing. How does that argument fit into this whole idea of home liquor delivery?
To Laura's point, it is probably impossible to get a perfect bill in 60 days. Mm-hmm. So some of this will have to go to licensing and regulation bureaus. We have a system in place for over-serving, and we have training that servers have to go through, and pretty hard over on that. I do think the delivery aspect certainly goes to the same thing. You, first of all, your servers have to go through training. And so to be a driver for an entity that is serving alcohol and delivers alcohol, you'd have to go through training. which would add a cost. It might be more expensive. I mean, I would assume to have liquor delivered would be a lot more expensive than going to Total Wine
Right.
or a juice and buying a bottle yourself. And so that premium on that delivery bottle would fold in all of that training.
That's a good point. I appreciate you bringing that up. And I'm also curious what's going to happen when someone decides, meaning a delivery person, decides someone on private property, standing on their own threshold of their own home, decides they're too drunk to accept a bottle of wine or a six-pack of beer. I don't know. We'll see what the courtrooms have to say about that. All right, we're out of time on this, but there's sure to be more debate as these bills work their way through the legislature. Our Land is next.